Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we are going to be diving back into our epic history TV Russia, or the history of Russia, part 2. With that being said, again, we're just going to dive right into it. Let's go.
In 1612, Russia was in a state of anarchy. They called it the Time of Troubles. The people were terrorized by war, famine, and plague. Up to a third of them perished. Foreign troops occupied Moscow, Smolensk, and Novgorod. But then,
so from what I'm getting is stemming from part 1, at the end of the Rurik dynasty, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Kingdom of Sweden went ahead and just took full advantage of this and went ahead and occupied all the cities. I'm wondering if the Crimean was it the Crimean Khanate at the time? I wonder if they tried to get something from the south too. I mean, I don't see why not, but I don't know. Let's go and keep going though, guys.
But then, Russia fought back. Prince Pozharsky and a merchant, Kuzma Minin, led the Russian militia to Moscow and threw out the Polish garrison. Since 2005, this event has been commemorated every 4th of November as Russian National Unity Day.
It's pretty cool that you guys in Russia still celebrate that as a historical day and stuff, like, you know.
Unity Day. The Russian Assembly, the Zemsky Sabor, realized the country had to unite behind a new ruler and elected a 16-year-old noble, Mikhail Romanov, as the next Tsar. His dynasty would rule Russia for the next 300 years.
And if I'm not mistaken, so from what I know from the Romanovs at this period, if I'm not mistaken, during the Rurik dynasty, they were boyars, which were like the top class of the, the nobility at the time. And if I'm not mistaken, they also had his great aunt, I think, was married to Ivan also. So, that's why I think they were picked to go ahead and carry Russia into the future, essentially. Once the Rurik dynasty kind of just dissipated. Yeah.
Dynasty would rule Russia for the next 300 years. Tsar Mikhail exchanged territory for peace, winning Russia much-needed breathing space. His son, Tsar Alexei, implemented a new legal code, the Sabornoye Uluzhenie. It turned all Russian peasants, 80% of the population, into serfs, effectively slaves, their status inherited by their children and with no freedom to travel or choose their master. It was a system that dominated Russian rural...
So also, if obviously that's true. So with that being said though, can we also say that it's because of Alexei I that the main reason why the Russia was so backward, coming into the 21st century? And essentially, what, him doing that, in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, but, could it be, this is just a discussion, could it be the reason why, it led up to the revolution and stuff like that? Maybe. Let's keep going though, guys.
Dominated Russian rural life for the next 200 years. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Nikon, imposed religious reforms that split the church between reformers and old believers. It's a schism that continues to this day. Ukrainian Cossacks, rebelling against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, recognized Tsar Alexei as overlord in exchange for his military support. It led to the 13 Years' War between Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Russia emerged victorious, reclaiming Smolensk and taking control of eastern Ukraine.
I'm a little surprised that they didn't end up taking more, because if it looks like they just kind of took essentially what they already had during the Rurik dynasty, they just took it back. Is what it looks like, instead of taking even more. But obviously that's going to come down the line though too.
Smolensk and taking control of eastern Ukraine. A revolt against Tsarist government, led by a renegade Cossack, Stenka Razin, brought anarchy to southern Russia. It was finally suppressed. Razin was brought to Moscow and executed by quartering. The sickly but highly educated Fyodor III passed many reforms. He abolished Mesnichestva, the system that had awarded government posts according to nobility rather than merit, and symbolically burned the ancient books of rank. But Fyodor died aged just 19. His sister Sophia became Princess Regent, ruling on behalf of her younger brother.
Yeah, it definitely looks like, I definitely would say that with Fyodor, maybe if he was able to rule a bit longer, maybe he would have been able to break that serfdom and maybe think of another way for his country to make money and stuff like that than just doing essentially medieval practices in non-medieval times, you know what I'm saying?
Ruling on behalf of her younger brothers, the joint Tsars Ivan V and Peter I. After centuries of conflict, Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth signed a treaty of eternal peace. Russia then joined the Holy League in its war against the Ottoman Empire. Sophia's reign also saw the first treaty between Russia and China, establishing the frontier between the two states.
That was definitely historic then, obviously. But I mean, before that though, I mean, how long had they been out there in the Siberian front though? Because I feel like that they probably only owned that land right above China for probably only like a few decades at this point, if even that. You know what I'm saying? They probably just acquired that. But
the frontier between the two states. At age 17, Peter I seized power from his half-sister Sophia. Peter became the first Russian ruler to travel abroad. He toured Europe with his Grand Embassy, seeking allies for Russia's war against Turkey, and learning the latest developments in science and shipbuilding.
It kind of surprises me that no ruler before that, obviously not traveling over there, because obviously they had that huge. They had the Poland-Lithuania Commonwealth literally blocking their entire way from the west, and then they also have the Ottoman Empire from the south, so they can't go over there willy-nilly. Not to mention the Kingdom of Sweden blocking out the entire Baltic Sea, so it's not like they can just go over willy-nilly. But I'm surprised that they didn't send maybe one or two people to just go venture out there and bring all this stuff back. You know what I'm saying?
In science and shipbuilding. The war against Turkey was successfully concluded by the Treaty of Constantinople. Russia gained Azov from Turkey's ally, the Crimean Khanate, and with it, a foothold on the Black Sea. Peter made many reforms, seeking to turn Russia into a modern European state. He demanded Russian nobles dress and behave like Europeans. He made those who refused to shave pay a beard tax. Peter built the first Russian navy, reformed the army and government, and promoted industry, trade, and education. In the Great Northern War, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark took on the dominant power in the Baltic, Sweden. The war began badly for Russia with a disastrous defeat to Charles XII of Sweden at Narva. But Russia won a second Battle of Narva, before crushing Charles XII's army at the Battle of Poltava. On the Baltic coast, Peter completed construction of a...
And I'm thinking, obviously, he has, they're having, their serfs, in a way, I think, fighting these wars. Unless they have a, you know, let me guys know if you know this, but unless they have a standing professional army, which, you know, a lot of kingdoms at this time really were having more of like a small setback, and or like a small unit be back just in case, and then usually they'll just conscript like crazy. But so I'm thinking, like, if they're having a conscript, are they having to do that from the serfs? Because so, like, that's kind of a lot. You're asking a lot, because you're literally asking slaves to go fight your wars, but obviously they want to because that's their homeland and stuff. So I don't know.
Peter completed construction of a new capital, St. Petersburg. The building of what would become Russia's second largest city among coastal marshes was a remarkable achievement, though it cost the lives of many thousands of serfs. The Great Northern War ended with the Treaty of Neustadt. Russia's gains at Sweden's expense made it the new dominant Baltic power. 4 years before his death, Peter was declared Peter the Great, father of his country, emperor of all the Russias. Peter was succeeded by his wife Catherine, then his grandson Peter II, who died of smallpox, aged just 14. Empress Anna Ivanovna, daughter of Peter the Great's half-brother Ivan V, was famed for her decadence, and the influence of her German lover Ernst Biron.
Well, all I can say is that it's a good thing that, you know what I'm saying, the Romanov family obviously went deep, because it almost looks like they were, if their family was like a lot shorter, like how the Romanov dynasty was, then with all these like deaths and quick, you know what I'm saying, 3-year reigns, all this, you know what I'm saying, like, I'm surprised, well, not surprised, but, you know, it's a good thing that they're deep, because times of troubles could have happened again, essentially is what I'm saying.
Ernst Biron. During Anna's reign, Vitus Bering, a Danish explorer in Russian service, led the first expedition to chart the coast of Alaska. He also discovered the Aleutian Islands, and later gave his name to the sea that separates Russia and America. After Anna's death, her infant grandnephew Ivan VI was deposed by Peter the Great's daughter Elizabeth. Ivan VI spent his entire life in captivity, until age 23 he was murdered by his guards during a failed rescue attempt. Elizabeth, meanwhile, was famed for her vanity, extravagance, and many young lovers. But she was also capable of decisive leadership. In alliance with France and Austria, Elizabeth led Russia into the 7 Years' War against Frederick the Great of Prussia. The Russian army inflicted a crushing defeat on Frederick at the Battle of Kunersdorf, but failed to exploit its victory. Meanwhile, in St. Petersburg, the Winter Palace was completed at vast expense. It would remain the monarch's official residence right up until the Russian Revolution of 1917. Peter III was Peter the Great's grandson by his elder daughter Anna Petrovna, who died as a consequence of childbirth. Raised in Denmark, Peter spoke hardly any Russian, and greatly admired Russia's enemy, Frederick the Great, so he had Russia swap sides in the 7 Years' War, saving Frederick from almost certain defeat. Peter's actions angered many army officers, and he'd always been despised by his German wife, Catherine. Together, they deposed Peter.
He was murdered. But, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, you can't have... Essentially, he was a foreigner. You can't have a foreign king unless you're, March Bernadotte. You can't have a foreign king come over and just take over. And, you know what I'm saying? It just ain't going to work. And if you do, at least take the time to learn your people, learn, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what they love, all that stuff, and then become exactly like how Peter the Great was, like the father of the land, you know what I'm saying?
Together, they deposed Peter III, who died a week later in suspicious circumstances. His wife, Catherine, became Empress of Russia. Her reign would be remembered as one of Russia's most glorious.
Alright guys, we'll go ahead and end it right there. So yeah, another history of Russia in the books, part 2. Look out in the future for part 3. Of course, it's coming out because I'll always finish out all my series. With that being said, I'll see you guys when I see you. I'm out. Peace.